Should South African President Cyril Ramaphosa fire his minister Gayton Mckenzie for his Twitter posts on race and on black people in particular? Welcome to another episode of The Dissection, and things are going down. What's happening now is that ActionSA is reporting the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gayton Mckenzie, to the Human Rights Commission. This follows an ongoing re-examination, re-evaluation, and conversation which is happening on Twitter and on social media about the tweets which were made by Gayton Mckenzie in his earlier days when he was not a minister and not a prominent politician about black people in particular. Gayton himself has gotten this scrutiny after his political party took umbrage, got angry, and made a series of videos and complaints about the content made about colored people, which was made by the Open Chat podcasters. The Open Chat podcasters have apologized, but during all of that, other people started looking at Gayton Mckenzie's own content and conversations about race, about black people in particular, and they think that Gayton himself has something to answer to. So as things stand right now, Gayton Mckenzie is also taking part in giving South Africa a free national dialogue. Between General Mknezie and Gayton Mckenzie and MacG and the other podcasters, they are saving President Ramaphosa 700 million rands because the national dialogue is said to cost 700 million rands. And now you've got all of these people who are helping save the Minister of Finance and the President 700 million rand. There's now an important discussion happening about the relationships between the different groups in South Africa, the different racial groups, and about the nature of hate speech in South Africa and whether certain groups can be hateful towards each other and what we can do to address those particular issues. So, ActionSA, let's start there because the latest development since the tweets have been discussed is that ActionSA has said they're taking Gayton Mckenzie to the Human Rights Commission, and this is what their statement says from today, day of recording. ActionSA has reported Minister Gayton Mckenzie to the South African Human Rights Commission for racist remarks in which he repeatedly used hateful slurs from the apartheid era along with other offensive references that serve to degrade and dehumanize black South Africans. While we hold reservations about the effectiveness of the South African Human Rights Commission, it remains the constitutionally empowered institution mandated to address such matters. Additionally, we will follow the prescribed processes, but are fully prepared to independently institute proceedings at the Equality Court in terms of Section 20 of the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act. Earlier this week, ActionSA joined South Africans in condemning vile and repugnant remarks directed towards the colored community. Today, we do the same in confronting racism in all of its forms by holding that a sitting cabinet minister accountable for comments that no reasonable person. Today, we do the same in confronting racism in all of its forms by holding a sitting cabinet minister accountable for comments that no reasonable person can defend as anything other than racist and demeaning. Racism and the dehumanizing of any person, regardless of their race, has no place in South Africa, which is why we have also lodged a complaint against Minister Dean McPherson for his deeply offensive and racially charged attacks on ActionSA supporters, referring to them as amapara and hobos. Non-racialism is a founding and defining value of ActionSA, anchoring our belief that we must fight to protect the dignity of every South African and ensure that all, especially those serving as cabinet ministers, uphold the very essence of our constitutional dispensation for which many have sacrificed their lives. So that's what ActionSA is saying. They're saying the tweets, the remarks that have been made by Gayton Mckenzie do not meet the standard which is required of a minister. They've also said Dean McPherson can't call them a mapara, can't call them bonga, he can't call them a lostro, can't call them a mapara and hobos. And they're right, to be fair to them. They're right. What are you doing, Mr. McPherson? You can't be referring to these political activists and members of ActionSA as amapara and hobos. They are concerned that those comments may breach the norms of respectful social discourse and may have particular connotations coming from a minister. So let's go back though to Gayton Mckenzie. Since Gayton Mckenzie and the Patriotic Alliance have responded to the Open Chat's podcast utterances, the social media community has been looking at them as well. Kenny Kunene has come out and said that Gayton Mckenzie is not a racist. Gayton Mckenzie, even in prison, was uniting people across the racial lines. But social media has gone to look at Gayton's own utterances, and he left those tweets up. I have no idea why people leave these tweets up. Of course, you can still find them, but it will be harder. Gayton didn't even go back and delete any tweets. They're still all there. They're still all there. So there was no strategy there. How can you be a minister knowing that you've been tweeting wild, wild things? Wild things like Rihanna, and then you leave them on your actual wall for the whole world to be able to see easily. So the social media community has been pointing out that Gayton Mckenzie has also said things which are hurtful to the black community. In as much as he was complaining that what was said was hurtful, racist by the Open Chats podcast, they're saying he's a hypocrite and he as a minister should be held even to a higher standard. And that, that member of parliament was actually asked to leave because he used the K word before he was a member of parliament, and that's Ronaldo House. So people are saying, hey, bruh, there's a standard, there's a precedent. These types of old tweets should be something that you're held accountable for, and they are seen to be damaging to the dignity of the black community. They are seen to be participating or spreading negative stereotypes, and they can be construed as hate speech. That's what the conversation on social media is saying, or that's what the discourse is at this particular moment. Gayton himself has responded to the criticism, and this is what he has said. This whole campaign to find something racist I have ever said is hilarious because you have now gone 13 years back and can't bring out one racist thing I ever said. I always and still fight that coloreds and blacks are one people being treated differently mistakenly. Another post that he posted, he said, you are more offended by our outrage as colored people against the vile racism that was directed at us. You find excuses for these young people who have hurt a whole race. You are encouraging future racists instead of nipping this in the bud. We are not you. That's what he said. Those were his words on social media, responding to his response to the Open Chats podcast and their comments, and two, against his own comments. Basically, he's saying, black and colored, one people, I've not said anything racist, etc. Now, before I look into Gayton's own remarks, I'm reminded about Adam Habib, who was the former Vice-Chancellor of Wits University, who then went to the London School of African Studies, saw us there, and he was lecturing there. He was also the dean of that particular faculty. And he was challenged by students there for his use of the N-word. And it actually was something which trended. He then made the argument that he could use the word as an Indian South African. The students took the view that he could not use the word, should be fired, he should apologize. It was a debate that played out for a very long period of time. And I'm also reminded that in America, we had this debate about whether Tyler, the singer, the South African singer, was a black person or a colored person and how she should be referred to. The Americans wanted to term her a black person. They find the term colored to be discriminatory and offensive. But obviously, South Africa has a different history around the use of that word. It is a racial classification. There is a racial group that identifies as colored, that identifies as distinct. There are books that have been written on this. Tessa Dooms wrote one as well about this particular topic. I recommend that you go get it. It's actually an exclusive book. I can't remember the title right now, but I think it's called Colored is the name of the book. So there are debates within a South African context around who is black, who can say particular words, who shouldn't say certain words. Some of the comments made by Gayton Mckenzie, very, very excessively use this K word. He uses it loosely, uses it freely, and it is an offensive word in the context of South Africa. The question then arises, who can say this word? It's clear when it's across the main racial lines. A white person cannot say the word, right? But what about a person who's mixed race? What about a colored person in South Africa? Is it the same level of offensiveness? Can they use that particular word? What do you think about it? So one of the places we can start is with the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act, which does have a definition for black people, and it defines black people as follows. Black people is a generic term which means Africans, coloreds, and Indians who are citizens of the Republic of South Africa by birth or descent, or who became citizens of the Republic of South Africa by naturalization before 27 April 1994 or on or after 27 April 1994, and who would have been entitled to acquire citizenship by naturalization prior to that date. So that's their definition in the Black Economic Empowerment Act. And it basically looks at Africans, coloreds, and Indians. So they're black, according to the BEE Act. On the 18th of June 2008, the Chinese Association of South Africa approached the High Court with a request that South African Chinese people be included in the definition of black people. This relief was granted, and as such, black people, for the purposes of broad-based black economic empowerment, now refers to Africans, coloreds, Indians, and Chinese people. So we're all black in that particular context within this particular meaning of the term. But obviously, the way it's defined in an act is not necessarily the way that people are going to see it on the ground or interpret it in the ground. So that's going to feed part of the discussion. But we have to also think about what is hate speech and what are the definitions of hate speech. Hate speech may be defined as expression which goes beyond mere insults or offensive language and which may infringe on the dignity of certain persons or groups. So the features of hate speech are that, number one, it impacts negatively on victims in terms of their self-worth, causes significant hurt, harm, pain, distress, sorrow, humiliation. It's degrading and it's dehumanizing, has the effect of depriving victims of their fundamental rights, and impugns the right to human dignity and equality. So these are all features which stem from the Constitution. Section 16 of the Constitution does protect free speech. Section 16 provides that everyone has the right to freedom of expression, which includes freedom of the press and other media, freedom to receive or impart information or ideas, freedom of artistic creativity, and academic freedom, and freedom of scientific research. However, the freedom is limited and does not extend to propaganda for war, incitement of imminent violence, or advocacy of hatred that is based on race, ethnicity, gender, or religion, and that constitutes incitement to cause harm. The Equality Act says in Section 10, right? Equality Act is meant to prevent and prohibit hate speech as well. In Section 10 of the Act, it provides that no person may publish, propagate, advocate, or communicate words based on one or more of the prohibited grounds against any person that could be reasonably construed to demonstrate a clear intention to be hurtful, harmful, incite harm, and or promote or propagate hatred. Publication of such expression is allowed if the expression is genuinely for the purposes of artistic creativity, academic and scientific inquiry, fair and accurate reporting, or such publication of any information, advertisement of note or notice is in the public interest. So that's what the Act says around hate speech. So we've now got an idea where hate speech fits in. So let me go back now to the case studies, the examples. My view is that Adam Habib, for instance, Professor Adam Habib, should not say the K word or the N word. I take that view and still take that view because I think that there's sometimes tension, real tension and discrimination between Indians and black South Africans in South Africa and also globally. If you think about India, India has a caste system where those at the bottom of the social ladder are darker skin-toned Indians. In that context, or taking cognizant of that context, the local context in South Africa, some of the experiences that you'll hear from people in KwaZulu-Natal about their experiences working for, Indian business owners are such that they feel that they've been discriminated against or looked down upon. Because of that, I don't think that the term should be used by Indian South Africans or Indian people globally because the dynamics are such that we don't know the intention and you're not fully in the group, even though for the purposes of BEE, you can apply and call yourselves black for particular things. And obviously under the apartheid system, there were different tiers of discrimination based on what, race you are from. So white people were at the top, then Indian people, then colored people, then black people were at the bottom, right? And as a result of all of that, there are still some tensions which exist based on different experiences and different encounters between the different racial groups and how they experience apartheid. But as far as Adam Habib is concerned, I think this term should not be used by him. I think that such terms should only be used by members of the group, right? The strictest definition of the group. So for instance, the B word should only be used by women if they choose to. I don't think that men should be freely using the B word, even gay men, because you may not be known to be a gay man. You may not be known to identify as a member of the LGBTIQ community. So you'd rather just not use the word. So the N word, K word can be used by black people if they choose, but even within the black community, there are still some people who will feel very uncomfortable with the use of that word for the same reasons that it's denigratory, it's dehumanizing, etc. But obviously, there's a movement that says they are reclaiming the word and that they can use that word in the context of being in the group and to reaffirm themselves as an affirmation of love, respect, my homie, etc., that type of a context. So that's my view. Now, in the South African context between the tribes, there's also been a very hot debate about the use of the S word by different tribes in South Africa. And this was a debate which we saw playing out in the MK party, but has played out before in other spaces where Tsonga people felt that Zulu people should not use the S word to describe them because historically that word has been used in a denigratory manner and in a dismissive and dehumanizing manner. So even though there are contexts where they use it, Tsonga people, they say, no, we don't want anybody using the S word. And it's understandable. If you are Tsonga, you can use the S word. You can determine how and when to use that word, whether you're Tsonga from Mozambique or Tsonga in South Africa, you can decide. But for someone who's outside of the group to come and freely use the S word, you don't know intention, you can't see the heart, that becomes the challenge. So back to Gayton Mckenzie. What about him? What about Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh, Dr. Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh? I think that's where it gets complicated, right? Because if you think about Sizwe and you watched his recent episode, he is a mixed race South African. He's got a black father and a white mother, but he does not identify as colored in particular and actually identifies as a black person. Gayton Mckenzie, on the other hand, identifies as part of the colored race in South Africa. So I would say, based on the way that they profess identity, face value, Sizwe should be able to use the word, but Gayton should not. But there's a complication there because phenotypically, Sizwe looks more colored than Gayton Mckenzie does. He's more lighter, right? And Gayton is on the darker side. So that can create complications for people who don't know these individuals. Here we're talking about high-profile individuals who you know. But what if we don't know these people, right? And they are freely using this word and we don't know the context. We don't understand whether they're saying it hatefully, affirmatively, lovingly, whatever the case is. So I think to be safe, nobody should use that word if they are in a borderline scenario, because think about the phenotypical side. How will you know that Sizwe doesn't identify? If you say nobody should use the word N-word, K-word, who is colored, etc., and then Sizwe uses it, he doesn't identify as colored, he identifies as black. And then Gayton, who looks black, identifies as colored. If he uses it, is it okay? Do you see where the complications are? I don't know. Where do you stand on this? Where do you stand on this? What do you think? So you get where I'm trying to say. I think if it's a borderline situation, to be safe, both of them should not use the word. But I don't know if I'm persuading you on this, because I think it does become complicated when you are now dealing with the difficult cases. There's no way to see the heart of men. There's no way to see intention, which is why I'm saying in this particular instance, both of them should not use the word. In general, when people ask about these words, etc., I always ask myself the question, why do you want to use the word? Why is it hurting your spirit so much that you can't say the word? Why do you have this zealous appetite to say a particular word? Why do you want to say the B word to women, the N word to black people, or whatever word to another group of people? What is in that word that every time you think about the word, you salivate, you want to say the word? Why? Right? I can get it. Maybe you're a fan of hip hop. You want to be able to rap along with your favorite rappers. But outside of the context of the music, why do you want to say the word? Why do you want to say the word? I think that's a question that we have to ask ourselves. Do you love the word? Do you want to hurt others with the word? Why do you want to say it? This is a complicated one, though, in cases where we're dealing with people who are borderline within the group. And that's what I think makes the Gayton Mckenzie situation a little bit complicated in the context of the K word, right? But aside from the K word, there are some things that Gayton Mckenzie said which I think do cross the line and can be interpreted as being racist. For example, one of the things he said is, black youths are very good at dancing outside courtrooms and returning to empty grocery cupboards back home. You need to use your time more wisely. What are you trying to say there, Chief? Black youths are very good at dancing. First, dancing, so we just all dance. It's all chiga machiga here. Outside courtrooms. So you're trying to say we're out there dancing outside courtrooms, either because we're criminals or we've got relatives who are criminals in there. This is definitely dehumanizing. This is definitely attacking the dignity of black people. This is definitely spreading a stereotype. We're returning to empty grocery cupboards back at home. So black people don't have food. Is that what you're saying? Hey, you need to use your time more wisely. So black people are using their time foolishly. What are you saying, Gayton Mckenzie? What are you trying to say here? So he said, there's nothing. You can't find anything. I think that there are some posts that you do need to reflect on, sir, and some posts you are very problematic that you have posted, right? This particular post that I'm talking about is laced with stereotypes. It's an assault on the dignity of black people. Problematic statements, by the way, do not need certain magic words. Because there's almost this idea that if you don't say certain words, then you are fine. That's wrong. You don't have to use certain magic words to exhibit discrimination. And we often understand that, right? So people right now are calling for Gayton Mckenzie either to resign or to be fired by the president. And it is a bit of a strange situation. Because this whole thing starts off on open chats. Then Gayton, comes in trying to, take a side and fight for his community. Chigi. Now people are looking at him funny. And all of this is also within that context where Kenny Kunene now has stepped down because he was found in the yard of a murder-accused criminal mastermind. And some of the conversation was already that Gayton has been trying to deflect and distract from that conversation around what he knows and his proximity to Kenny in respect to this particular criminal underworld, explosion that has been caused by General Mcknezie. So as things stand, there's a lot of people looking, saying, are we going to see the top two leaders of the Patriotic Alliance fall within the space of 60 days? I don't know. What do you think, though? Do you think that people are exaggerating? Do you think they're justified to call for Gayton Mckenzie to be fired? Do you think he does at least need to apologize, delete those tweets, retract those tweets, clarify his viewpoints on these particular issues? Where do you stand on this? Do you think that he's black, so it shouldn't matter what he said? Let's have a conversation in the comments. I'll meet you there.